Hey, it's Alina Wilson here from Estimate Mastery, and I'm super excited to have today's special guest, Kaylee Joyce from Verisk Weather Solutions, that's joining us for a conversation on hurricanes and the season that's before us here in 2023. So, Kaylee, do you want to say hello to the folks?
Yes, hi, I'm Kaylee Joyce. I'm a product manager with the Verisk Weather Solutions team. I'm very excited to be here. Always excited to talk about weather.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's very interesting to talk to someone like yourself that actually has a background in the science behind it and everything. So let's just for our audience, can you fill them in on where you come from and kind of how you got to be in the position at Veris that you're at now?
yep, yeah. So I graduated college with a degree in atmospheric science from Cornell University, and then joined Verisk about 6 years ago. So I started out as a weather analyst, running a lot of analytics for our weather solutions team. And now I've progressed up to product manager. Um, so a little bit of background also, our Verisk Weather Solutions team is a smaller division within Verisk. There's about 30 of us on the team, mostly made up of meteorologists, software engineers, radar scientists. So it's a very interesting group, and we have a lot of great background in the industry. So kind of a unique division. But
Yeah, definitely. And in fact, before I started talking to my contact over at Verisk, I didn't really understand that it had you guys set aside to understand the weather patterns and everything that happens that goes into the storm and being prepared for that. Being at Verisk, you have to be prepared for what's going to happen out in the market and the industry. So that's really what we're going to talk about today is, how should we set ourselves up? How should we be prepared for storm seasons and then kind of like looking back what's happened and that kind of a thing. So first off, I'd like to talk about this season's outlook, where we sit here. We're in August 2023. If you're listening to this later in the year, this will still apply, what we're going to talk about right now. So what are you thinking? What is Verisk looking at over there?
yeah, and to your point about watching this later on, it's pretty interesting. It would be interesting to watch this in a few months to see how things have turned out.
Right.
Already, forecasts for this season have changed in the last couple months. Um, as far as outlook for this year, there's a couple different resources that you can go to find actual forecasts for number of storms, number of hurricanes. NOAA and the National Hurricane Center are obviously a good one. There's also there's a few others. Another one being Colorado State University. They put out preseason forecasts, so they're using a lot of different climate models and meteorological elements to try and decide, how many storms can we expect this year, how many major hurricanes. And so the preseason, I'm saying preseason, the
Mhm.
hurricane season we typically say runs from June 1st through the end of November. So that's when hurricanes start to ramp up in the Atlantic Ocean. Um, so preseason forecasts, we're starting to call for kind of we'll call an average season. So based on what was happening out there in the atmosphere, an average number or near average number of storms, hurricanes, major hurricanes. I think average number of named storms is around 14.
Mhm.
Um, so calling for around 14 named storms. Um, I think NOAA's, I have it written down somewhere here. NOAA's initial outlook back preseason was 12 to 17 named storms, 5 to 9 hurricanes, and 1 to 4 major hurricanes. And so, I guess another thing to clarify, a major hurricane just means a hurricane that's a category 3 to 5. So sustained winds of at least, I think it's 111 miles per hour. Um, so those were the preseason outlooks, and already they've started to kind of increase what we're expecting for hurricane season this year. So Colorado State, which I said was another resource, they issued a new outlook at the beginning of July, and they were already saying, nope, we're expecting this to be a very active season now. So things have changed climatologically, that they're like, yeah, we could see, you know, upwards of 18 named storms, which is above average. So,
Interesting. And do you know how many they've already? Of course, I'm extremely ignorant in this part of the industry. So how many have we had so far?
yeah, so we've actually had four named storms so far. What made this year unique is that we actually had three named storms in June, which I, I can't say for sure, but I'm pretty sure historically this hasn't happened before, or it's just far above average. So June 1st, which I said was like the start of hurricane season, um, we already had Tropical Storm Arlene out in the Atlantic. And then we had Tropical Storms Brett and Cindy form in June. Um, and then Dawn was the first hurricane of the season. And that was, spinning out in the Atlantic, hundreds of miles off of Canada. But we have had four already. It has slowed down a bit. As of mid-July, we'd had those storms. We haven't seen anything in a few weeks, but that's not to say that they're not coming. So yeah, it was an active start to the season, and it's kind of slowed down a little bit, but
Yeah, and this is a question I didn't really prep you for. So if you don't know the answer, that's fine. But statistically, you talk about named storms, not named storms. I'm thinking, oh, these storms are headed for the US. It's like, no, hang on. They hang out in the Atlantic, they die. But statistically, how many out of a storm season would hit, land? Whether it be out in, the islands or US proper.
yeah, and unfortunately, I don't know that stat
That's
directly.
okay.
Um, could look it up and get back to you afterwards if we want to post it somewhere. Um, it's usually a few a year. Again, it changes year over year. I guess one thing to just keep in mind too is last year we had it was overall average in terms of named storms, but it was one of the more destructive years in terms of damage and loss costs, just because we had Hurricane Ian, which just devastated Florida. Um, Fiona impacted Puerto Rico pretty heavily.
Yeah.
So it really just takes one storm to make a hurricane season memorable. So
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going with it is, we hear, oh, it's going to be active, and then our brains go, oh my gosh, but you don't know. Yeah, I'm just curious. Like you said, Ian was so devastating, and that's one storm that we'll remember for at least, whoever knows how many years. It was so bad in some areas. How long the effects will be, there. And being in the property restoration industry here with what we do and what the listeners are dealing with, they're directly affected too. So it's just why I was thinking, we're in a weird catch 22. We want work, but we don't want there to be a storm or
it's
a disaster. But we're here to help you whenever it does hit. So it's a funny industry,
yeah,
but I love it because it's recession proof. There always will be a storm somewhere happening that we can help people. So that's what's great about what we do.
yeah,
Okay, so that's a great segue into let's take Hurricane Ian for instance from last year with you at the weather solutions area of Verisk. How did that affect what y'all do? What kind of talk me through, what happened there and how it would affect you as a product manager?
yep, yeah. So whenever there is like I said, we are a team made up of meteorologists and weather nerds, to say the least. So we're paying attention to anything happening in the Atlantic and the Pacific. But right now, the products that we have are only running in the Atlantic, but we will be expanding them globally in the future. But that's our focus really now. And so we do have our own hurricane model that we run. It's called Respond, is the product, and we have Respond Hurricane. And so that product actually starts running as soon as a storm is named,
Mm,
as soon as it becomes tropical storm, dawn. We start running that product automatically starts running. And so what that is it's a 5-day outlook of the maximum sustained winds as well as maximum wind gusts. And it is updating 4 times per day. So it's a forecast, and we're delivering that data to our customers. We also work very closely with our customers in the insurance industry as well as adjacent markets. So kind of think of us a little bit as consulting too. We will deliver out forecasts, narratives to our customers. If we start to think that this storm might impact land, we'll issue out written forecasts for them to follow along with. And then if they have questions, obviously they can come back and we can give some clarifying answers there. But our products are running in that forecast side of things. So with Ian, we were tracking Ian from the very beginning as it got closer to landfall. And the important thing to realize with these hurricane forecasts, if you've ever looked at the National Weather Service or National Hurricane Center forecasts, they're constantly shifting just a little bit. These models are constantly taking into account different factors, and especially with the track of Ian, it did shift quite a bit. So initial forecasts were calling for a more northward landfall in Florida. And as it got closer and closer, it shifted further south. And even right before it made landfall, forecasts shifted it a little bit more further south, where it eventually made landfall near Fort Myers. So our customers who had access to our data, they were tracking these forecasts as they updated throughout time. And then even after it makes landfall, we continue tracking the storm, because in the case of Ian, it moved across Florida and went out over the Atlantic again and then made a second landfall. So we do provide forecast information when there is a hurricane or named storm. And then, like I said, we do kind of provide services and assistance if customers have questions about, specific impacts. Yeah, so I guess a lot of our customers using this data to, it's one, so that they could use it for analytical purposes too, to say, okay, based on where this is going to hit, how is it impacting our portfolio or our book of business in terms of like an insurance company, or just allocating resources. Where do we need to be ready to have people on the ground to respond to this event? So that's kind of how the forecast information is used on that side of things. But
I got you. Yeah. So is that released, if anyone who is using Xactimate or Exact Analysis, is that something that, if that we would have access to, do you know?
We do have it available in our own platform that we call Respond Map, so that you can actually visualize the forecasts. So it's not currently built into Xactimate or Exact Analysis. If anyone was interested in getting access to the data, they should definitely reach out to Verisk or any of their Verisk reps to get in touch with us, and we can talk them through it then probably.
Okay. Yeah. So
go
ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was just saying it is a bit of a standalone product right now, just in terms
Interesting.
of the forecast for the hurricane data.
Yeah, because we've got, pretty big restoration companies who have multiple offices in multiple areas. I'm just wondering, if they could shift resources like you were talking about and be prepared for what's going on. That's intriguing to me. But we'll talk about how to contact here at the end. So hang on for that if you're listening here. So with that Ian forecast, everything that happened there, was it able to, you said it shifted at the last moment, but for the most part, is it in enough of a general area that it is a very useful tool for those that are trying to do what we just talked about?
Yeah, definitely. And the forecasts were pretty close. It was just, if you looked at it over time, it just slowly shifted further and further south. But yeah, it is pretty close. And like I said, we do display the maximum sustained winds and the maximum wind gusts. So that's information we're trying to portray with these forecasts. And then actually, we do have post-event information. So basically, we take the best footprint of what happened with Hurricane Ian, and we are making adjustments based on a few different factors. Surface roughness, so basically how winds are interacting with land versus water. So that's all built into the algorithm. And then we also pull in weather observation data from weather stations, airports, to adjust the wind speeds a bit. But basically our post-storm file is the best look at what happened in terms of winds with a system. So once we develop out this post-storm file, it can then be used to look at and say, okay, these are the most significantly impacted wind areas. You know, do I have properties in this location? Do I have to respond in this specific location? So it's basically just to pinpoint specific impacts after the fact. So that's what we call our post-storm data then. So
Yeah. And is it pretty, how not accurate, but like how to down to like the foot or inch, or is it like, within this mile, or is it in this zip code? Kind of
yeah,
how do you
it's very granular data. And so you can zoom in, we say to a property level. It
okay.
is, at a gridded level to like about a kilometer, I think, but it is, if you were to zoom into a property, you could see probably the impacts or general impacts at that location. So
Interesting.
highly granular data, yeah.
Yeah, because what we run into as on the contractor side of the industry is that they'll go out, they'll look at the roof, they'll try to determine, is this what wind, speed was actually here, and we try to, they try to approximate it with some other kinds of weather reports. That's why what you do is so interesting to me. It's like if we could, unequivocally prove, look, it's in this swath where there was 111-mile-an-hour sustained winds. It's like, well, of course that class of shingle can't handle that sustained wind, therefore we need to replace whatever. So that's kind of what I'm looking at from a contractor standpoint, is just to back up, like, hey, these are facts. It's not my opinion that this is damage. It's like, this is the fact, is what happened.
Yep.
And we can rely on this data. Let's move forward with the repair or whatever it is. That's really what's so valuable for our listeners, on this side of things. So
Yeah.
that's very intriguing.
Yeah, so we actually do have a product that helps with that then too. Basically, we're taking that respond data, that post-storm footprint of what happened, and we're pulling it into a property specific report. So you could search for a specific location, and we would return what the maximum sustained winds were at that location for the storm, what the maximum wind gusts, 3-second wind gusts were for the storm, and all that is pulled into a report.
Mm.
And to your question about granularity too, I think we provide it in bins. So like, this is what we're saying happened at the property, but then also here's a 1 mile bounding box, here's a 5 mile bounding box. So if it does account a little bit for, if there's a bit of a error, it would say, okay, we're saying there's only 40-mile-per-hour winds at the property, but then within 1 mile there's 50, and then within 5 miles there was 80. So then maybe you're like, oh, maybe I should go check it out because there might have been an 80-mile-per-hour gust nearby. So we do provide a range usually in
Wow.
those types of reports just to account for that. But
Interesting.
so that's called our benchmark reports, just for reference.
Okay, so benchmark reports would be.
Yep.
Now we're discussing, of course, the topic, and you'll see that in the title, is about hurricane. But of course, our people also work a lot of windstorms across, the Midwest, hailstorms. Big one just hit Colorado. Is that something? You mentioned you were kind of staying out near the Atlantic, or that is kind of where your data is coming from. Am I, what I'm trying to ask here is there other weather reports that could be pulled from something like benchmark?
Yep, there definitely is. So the Atlantic is really just for our hurricane data.
Right.
That's just the focus. But we do have US wide hail and wind data as well. So we have respond hail and wind, which you could use to visualize the data after an event. And what's unique about that data is it's what we call near real time, in that we're tracking hailstorms and windstorms as they're occurring. So the data is
Mm.
available like every 15 minutes. For hail, for wind, it's every hour. Or you could look at it post event and say, oh, this is where the hailstorm happened in Colorado. This is where the largest hail happened. So we do have that data available visually if you wanted to look at it on a map, or we also have the benchmark reports available at a property specific level as well. So
Okay, so that's what I'm understanding is, so a property specific level, we want a benchmark report. If we want to pull a hail map or wind data, that's going to be the
respond.
respond. That's fine. I'm
Yep.
gonna circle that one. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's really interesting is, contractors will look for an area that has like red, it's like, we're going to go knock doors over there, that kind of a thing. And then if they get a property specific problem, they could go pull the benchmark. Okay.
That's exactly
Excellent.
the workflow.
It's like I've done this or heard this before. Just kidding. No, no, no. That's awesome. Yeah, I see. I didn't know Verisk had these kinds of tools at our disposal. There's other, similar things in our market, but the nice thing about getting a Verisk tool that does something like this is it's not it's like the insurance company uses Verisk and the contractor already uses Verisk. So it's like an even so it's like an level, even playing field. So both sides, they already know, we both use Xactimate, we both use Exact Analysis or whatever it is. So it makes it less of a contentious environment to have a conversation like, well, actually the Verisk report shows we've
Yeah.
got this benchmark report showing, this data, and taking the opinion out of it as much as we can and just dealing with facts is really our goal. And this is a big help with a lot of that,
Yeah.
especially storm related data.
Having those tools available, either if it's for research into an event or just trying to fast track something, trying to be like, oh, we saw at this property there was 2-inch hail. This is where we target. It's there's a few different use cases for sure, and on both the contractor side and then maybe the insurance and insurance adjuster side of things. But to your earlier point too, the benchmark reports are actually integrated into Exact Analysis and Xactimate. Um, it is something that you can have turned on or enabled in those platforms. So it makes it very easy to just order a report right through Xactimate, to have it handy, have it there for your reference in your documentation if needed. There's also a use case too that we've seen a little bit more common with some of the insurance carriers or IA companies, where they're automating benchmark reports and alerts. So if a hurricane assignment comes in or an assignment is labeled as hurricane, they are automatically delivered a benchmark report on that hurricane assignment or claim so that they have it at their disposal. And then those can also be pushed down from Exact Analysis into Xactimate too. So
That's amazing. That's really good to know as well. Wow. How do you know how long this service has been out for?
um since I've joined the company, before 6 years prior. So
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was just curious.
yeah,
To
we've
see
made
just
we've made a lot of updates in recent years, and the workflow's a lot easier now to integrate, and to use. Um, and one nice thing too is if you're an Exact Analysis and you're enabled for benchmark reports and you order one, it usually only takes a few minutes then to be delivered. It's pretty automatic process then.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's good to know too. Okay, well, I think that's all of our questions that I had here to go over today. And so I really appreciate you being here. Any parting thoughts or last things that you can think of to mention?
No, if there's any questions too about hurricane or definitely feel free to reach out to me or my team. Definitely good to be prepared for hurricane season as much as you can. Like I said, it really only takes one major storm. Um, there's a lot of resources out there, either from us or National Hurricane Center if you're looking for more information too. So
Yeah, excellent. What's the best way for folks to get in touch with the various weather solutions?
Um, either if you have a Verisk rep or an account person that you work with, they could put you in contact with me, or I'm happy to provide out my contact information too as needed. But
Yeah, that's awesome. So just to wrap up, hope that was really useful information for everyone listening. And remember, the respond weather data is going to be like your hail maps or your wind maps, or the kind of the overall. And then if you want the property specific information, it's the benchmark report that you want to ask for. And again, like Kaylee said, you can reach out to your Verisk rep, whoever you contact when you have to re-up Xactimate. They usually send you an email. You should be able to find what you need from them. Also, you can always reach out to pricing at 800-424-9221. 828 and just ask a question like this, like, how do I get a benchmark report? They also can help you if you're not clear who your rep is. So thank you, Kaylee, for being here with us. And we really appreciate your time. And definitely we'll be on the lookout to see what happens this storm season. And we're excited to see what happens either way.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
All right. If you need to reach us here at Estimate Mastery, you can always email info@estimatemastery.com. You can search on YouTube, Estimate Mastery, and we're also on Facebook. So if you want to take a look, we are out there in the world with our ear on the ground for things like hurricane season and everything up and coming. So thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.